So diving right into it, transition into the next chapter. What has it been for you? Has it been what you expected? Has it been unique? What are some things that stand out as something you didn't expect about transitioning, and pros and cons?
Yeah, for sure. So obviously anybody knows racing's pretty wide open. You're traveling across the country nonstop, weekend after weekend. So the pace is pretty fast, and I think you get used to that over time. And I had a clue that once that stopped, I mean, it was going to be pretty chill. Although I was looking for a break, but at the same time, it went from 100 miles an hour to a halt pretty quick, which was just a change. I think I still applied myself in other areas within the industry, so I kept busy, and we moved and progressed into different areas, and ultimately too, as a racer, I was looking forward to that. I put a lot of things off hold because racing was just the priority at the time. Yeah. And the focus. So it was also an exciting opportunity that when, I did have some time to myself, that I could kind of start thinking and putting some thought into what I wanted to do, and exploring into those opportunities that I'd want to do for so long. So, it's an adjustment. I will say you learn a heck of a lot about yourself. I think, you only know yourself as a racer, and what motivates you in that aspect, it consumes your time. But, once that's done, it was really important to turn the page and move forward. So
cool. More questions on coffee, but I want to save those for the end, and dive into some Supercross stuff, if you don't mind.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's exciting.
Yeah. What are your thoughts? Just the chaos and results from round one to round two, and the level of competition and the crashes at round two. What are your thoughts?
Well, I guess the first thing that comes to my head is just, it's a really stacked field. I think watching practice, knowing what it's like in that position, watching practice, and what is it, the top 13, 14, 15 are within a second.
Yeah.
And that could change from track to track, but still, I mean, it's not such a blow in your head when you're fifth place, sixth place on the list, but you're only within like 2 or 3 seconds. In dirt bike racing, I mean, in car racing, like tenths would be huge. Like in dirt bike racing, like that is so small. Like, anyway, so that's the first thing that runs through my head, but also just, I will say the first race, just kind of seeing where everybody was at. I think as time goes on, we're going to see the top guys kind of, go to the front, whether it's 4 or 5, 3, 4 or 5 guys. But I was also surprised at some of the inconsistency a little bit. It's crazy as a fan, right? Like Tomac, the reigning champ, he got, what was it, 13th the first round?
Yeah.
And then he wins, right? And then Barsha wins and gets 10th, and it's just like, this is nuts. But I think a lot of the it's even that much more important just to get a start. If you're up front, I mean, today, and especially, it's going to make your life a lot easier. And even over the course of a championship, these guys, I'd say it's going to be that much harder in today's day to win a championship, just because of the depth of talent.
Totally. Yeah. What are your thoughts on, guys like Justin Brayton being, I should know this, but I think he's second or third, and I think he's third in points, 2 points behind. It just talks to, like what you just said, the starts and consistency, and how important that is.
Yeah. And I kind of think about, one of the things that I got hassled on through my career was like, I didn't go for it, and I think some guys are known for, they're going to go all out and win the race and do whatever it takes. And I kind of, I wouldn't say played it safe, but just rode smart, try to maintain, like I had a championship mentality. And I think a mentalities like that is going to really shine today, because Justin Brayton's a good example, right? Like, he's got a lot of knowledge. He's got a lot of experience. He's a great starter. So, watching the first 2 rounds, he got good starts. And it's not like he had to ride anything special. He just had to maintain and not make any mistakes. And so after 2 rounds, he's up there in the points. And so I think these guys, especially the veterans, are going to have to really be focused on getting good starts and, limiting the mistakes, and not so much worrying about winning. Not so much worrying about winning the race. Yep, you want to win the race, right? But keeping that championship mentality, if that's what you're in for the long run, which they are.
Totally.
Consistency is going to be ever more important.
Totally. What do you think about the schedule that's where it being that they're traveling to one city and then staying there? I mean, they've done it now for one, half of a season, but you've never done that. What are your thoughts on it from the outside looking in, kind of?
I mean, as a racer, I think these guys are probably somewhat pumped, really. I think as a racer, you want to kind of, they get to line up Saturday. They don't got to wait a whole week to kind of like, maybe they didn't have a great night. Like, man, I want to get back out there, right? You know what it's like as a racer. And so they only got to wait a few more days, and then they get back out there. There will be a week break here and there, but I think there's something kind of nice about kind of knocking it out, getting it done, going fast, because the less you have time to think about it, kind of the better. Totally. As a fan, I mean, heck, you get more racing, in a tighter window as well. So that's kind of exciting. But, and even just going back to the rider, these guys are racing, and it's not like they have to fly home, practice. So there's probably less time on the bike, and they could be a little bit more rested and ready to go. And just enjoy the perks of, I guess, camping out in the camper or hotel or whatever.
Yeah. So, I was thinking it's got to be easier on the riders because they're not traveling. They're traveling a fraction of the amount. They're going to 7 different venues, I think, instead of 17. So it's a lot less travel, which will be.
Well, yeah, I mean, those early mornings, that I say that's kind of draining too. You race till 10 o'clock at night. Well, then you're up at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning trying to catch a 7, 8 o'clock flight, and it's like over time. Yeah, you're absolutely right. That starts to wear on a guy. So the travel, especially. Yeah, I didn't think of that. Yeah.
Do you think that Supercross would or could keep this kind of schedule in the future, or do you think that they'll probably go back to 17 different locations?
Well, I think they'll probably go back to 17 different locations. I think in terms of when you look at sales and revenues for the promoters, right? Like, totally. For an Anaheim, I mean, Anaheim's the mecca kind of the moto industry. So it's probably easier to fill three rounds of Anaheim, where Houston, that's probably going to be harder. So I would have to guess, they're going to probably spread it out again, kind of once things get back to normal, whenever that is.
Totally. Yeah. I was thinking it saves Supercross money by not having to pack up the whole, track and stadium and all the infrastructure and move it. So it saves them money, but it is also harder to, get people to come back a second time, especially with such a short turnaround.
Yeah. They, in the short term, save a little bit, save a buck, but in the long term, lose on the sales, ticket sales. Yeah.
Totally. All right. A little more personal question. Who are you rooting for this season when the 450 main event lines up? Can you talk about who you want to win?
Put me on the spot. There's something about I guess a couple things. Like, there's something about like Ken Roxon. I feel like he's always had it, especially kind of seeing him kind of being able to come back from his injuries. It's pretty, I think anybody would be encouraged by that. You can't help but like the guy. And, being that what he's been through, I'd like to see him, get a championship now that Eli's got one. I think looking at Eli the last few years, like, I felt for the guy. I mean, 3 years, there was 3 years, like it was kind of his, so to speak. But he finally got one. I'm sure he wants another. Yeah. But I'd like to see Ken do it. And even a good friend of mine, Marvin, Marvin is, he's my age and he's been at it for a long time, and he's got the skill and the talent and the speed, everything, all the tools. It's just a matter of putting it together and getting it done as well. So yeah, I'd say probably those two, taking out like, any bias or teams that I've rode for and stuff like that, just kind of thinking as a fan, maybe more, so to speak.
Cool. For me as a test rider and that side of the things, it's pretty exciting to see something new and have something interesting to talk about. What was your experience with the air shock when you rode it with it, and were you riding with it a lot before you went racing with it in 2016? It was 2013, actually. Sorry.
Yeah, 2013. We had a good stint there where we tested it. We had some bugs that that they needed to work out, which they were able to do for the most part. In 2013, we were fighting a lot of harshness, which, that was a whole different bike model, so, I mean, there's so many things that could come into play, whether it's and this is at the highest racing level, right? You're pushing it, you're trying to get the most out of everything, and you just feel these little things that you don't like. And so we were battling a little bit of a harshness, and the air shock helped take that away. And so that was good. But with what happened at Anaheim 3, I think that was the last time I ever rode the air shock, because just we couldn't, if that was the main event, we just couldn't sacrifice that many points. So we never did put it on again. And then they brought there was some guys in house that really improved the spring shock. So we were able to get better in that direction. And then we stuck with that ever since. And then the new bikes came out, and it was, that harshness went away. So we were good. But now, bringing that back, there was little things then it just wasn't able to compensate for, that the spring shock just did better, that the air shock just couldn't do, I felt. But now, obviously it's a matter of development, time, R&D. I mean, what was that, 7 years ago? So I got to imagine things are getting better. They're working through it more. And like anything, it's new, the more time you put into it, probably going to get better. I always believe there's a way to improve, for sure.
Totally.
It can't be, but Porsche won on the air shock, right?
Yeah.
I think. Is that right?
Yeah, you did.
Yeah. So I mean, is it competitive? Absolutely. So yeah, I mean, it's pretty cool, especially if you've seen that thing, which you probably have, right? Like, to make something that's totally, completely different from what the normal is. I mean, you got to hand it to them. It's pretty impressive, regardless of anything. So, and the fact that they're competitive with it is pretty special.
Pretty cool. It's pretty wild. It's yeah. What were the pros and cons that you remember of riding with it? I mean, you kind of touched a little bit on the cons, but like what was, and you touched a little bit on the pros of reducing harshness, but did you feel that like it was lighter, or do you feel anything else that was good or bad about it?
Well, it was definitely lighter at the time. I don't know how much, but it took away the harshness and absorbed the bumps a little bit better. The little couple things that, when you come into the braking bumps, and it just seemed like it wasn't compliant, or like jumping off the tabletops, right? Like jumping on offs, like that pop. It didn't have, so just little things that add up to be a lot, but it wasn't very large. And not to mention the other thing, like when like on the start with the vibration, when we lost air, well, that was a negative, but they fixed that, and now they're moving forward. So again, not to say it can't work. It already has worked, but it's just a matter of like, cleaning up those things and finding new ways to build it, or, however they do it internally or whatnot. I mean, they got engineers and smart people in place to fix those things. So it's just a matter of digging into them, and for sure there's a way.
Totally. Yeah. Totally. Cool. So what was the motivation for you talking about coming back racing for 2021?
Well, gosh, honestly, which I knew was bound to happen, but just the fire came back, not to say it didn't a long time ago, but it was just a matter of we were going through a lot of things. And actually, for a couple of years, we looked at coming back at which we had our new daughter, Harper. She was born, and that was just a lot going on. So we decided that wasn't the right time. So a year later, we revisited it. And, in a matter of, it was a lot of things that were going to come into play. One, I was excited to go back racing. And two, just a matter of making it, doing it under our circumstances, right? So trying to do a Supercross only, making sure that, the proper training could be the right way, the right deal. I mean, I didn't want to go back and race for nothing or something free, right? Like it had to be worth it. And so kind of taking these things all into consideration, and even talking it with my wife, we spent a lot of time kind of going back over it and just thinking about things. And the one thing we didn't want to do, and I didn't want to do, was like, well, we've started so many new things after racing. I don't want to give all that up and just to go back racing and make it all about that again. Like, I want to do it right, but I also want to make sure that, now that we have, the coffee company set up, we have Harper, not disrupt a lot of things, and so forth. And we have a lot of other things going for us, which are good, but, racing just being an extension, adding racing into the mix now. So, we looked at some ways, and I was actually kind of on the bike prepping, getting ready, making sure like the body was responding, making sure that I was good enough to go. And it just, the deal didn't come together. The money wasn't there. The rides, for that matter, aren't there. Not to mention COVID just made things a lot harder as well. And, I think I'm learning a lot about myself still through the process. And, it was one area that, heck, I always think that you always want to knock on a door and be proactive on your part, but if it's not there, then it's not meant to be either, So, it's kind of hard too when you're 30 years old, and it's not like you're an old man either, but, just the excitement and of coming back racing and doing it all over again was, something I was looking forward to, but it didn't add up. So, we move forward.
But would you consider being a part of a team in the future if there was an opportunity to help out or be a mentor, or have you thought about training a rider or doing anything on the side of like being a part of the sport as on that side of things?
Yeah, no, for sure. I know what you're saying, and that, yeah, absolutely. One of the things that I still want to do, given the right situation and the right rider, is, I'd love to work with a top level athlete as far as coaching more so, and being there and kind of going through it with them together. That's something, a challenge that I would like, but also, it's kind of one of those things I feel like I've learned so much along the way. I'd love to apply it to the next rider if they're open and willing. Nothing has really come about yet, but, on the other front, even working with, amateur level riders too, and just kind of not so much one-on-one, but like kind of doing some group stuff, whether it's ride days or kind of getting together and kind of, going over, just talking about everything, whether it's training, bike rides, commitment, focus, applying yourself on the track, mental, the mental side of things, physical. Yeah, very much. Yeah.
What was your favorite part about racing, and what was your least favorite part about racing in general, the whole middle of your career?
Yeah. I don't know. I there's a lot of them, but one of them that really sticks out was just, being able to travel. I really, especially as the years started to kind of go by, you started getting into your third and fourth and fifth, like I really enjoyed, getting up, going to the airport Friday morning, heading to the racetrack, get my coffee, right, going to the racetrack in the morning and staying over there and and just, there's, it's also kind of hindered a little bit because you're a little bit anxious, right? You're like, man, tomorrow's race day, so you're feeling pressure. But when you strip that all off of it, like I really enjoyed traveling to the races, especially with Lindsay, and victories really made it a little bit sweeter. Of course, they're hard, and the road to get there is hard. But being able to experience that, and also just, I really always felt like I had a good team of people around me as well. you know, whether it was my wife and my parents, family, to, you know, the team. You know, I got to work with Roger for every year but 1 year, Ian, Jim, Carlos, you know, Mike Gosler. I mean, there were so many cool people along the way that like really solid individuals. And so that made it fun too. And even back at even the training, when all the time I spent at the farm, Ricky Carmichael's farm, and spending time with him and Big Rick and Jeannie and Ricky himself. And yeah, gosh, I mean, there's so many awesome parts that were just so fun. And the whole process was enjoyable. Granted, you strip off all the pressure, right? Like,
yeah.
But when it was all said and done, I was like, dang, that was pretty awesome. You know, that was pretty cool. I never wanted to forget that, keep that perspective, you know.
Totally.
And I guess the part I didn't like, yeah, I guess if I had to say one thing, honestly, Josh, it's probably the injury side.
Yeah.
You know, what we do is awesome. And it was, you know, and I'm thankful for a lot of things. But the injury side, like, it's like, damn, you know, like somebody, you know, that I would say the injury side is just tough to see. And it's part of the sport, of course, right? But that's the part you don't like. And, but yeah, if I had to pick, yeah, that's yeah, I didn't like that.
What about 450s, 454 strokes? Do you think they're too fast, or do you think they could be even faster? Or are we playing with that bubble?
No, I think anything more than a 450, yeah, now we're going too fast. But I think 450 is like the limit. And you got to keep in mind, you know, we have EFI and mapping and all these types of things that honestly, I detuned my bike pretty much all the time. You know, and so you could say, yeah, the bikes are too fast, but with the you know, option to kind of detune the bike or bring down, you know, the horsepower a little, play around with the mapping. I mean, all these things you could do. And it's not about how fast these things can go. It's more about usable power and making it usable. So, you know, where do you want that power within the, you know, the range? And so, yeah, I think we're good. No more power.
Yeah. Cool.
Even outdoors. I mean, you ride some of these 450s. I mean, these things just keep going and you're like, oh my gosh, like,
yeah, I had some of my worst races when the bike was too fast, and I had some of my best races when it was, you know, as tuned down as we could get it.
Yeah,
funny how that works.
Yeah, like a 250, you're trying to get all the, you know, you can override those things because they're lower in power, which is kind of nice. And a too fast of a 450, I mean, you're going to be arm pump, you know, and pretty sketchy. Yeah, so yeah, it's a balance.
I like it. Yeah. And then I guess you touched on this a little bit, but why do you think you were so successful, even though some people would say that you weren't always the fastest raw speed, one lap timed on the track each weekend? What do you think separated you from other guys? And at the same time, why were you able to go throughout your career with less injuries than others?
Yeah, I don't have the full answer to that, and I don't want to act like,
Totally.
you know, I don't want to act like either like, oh yeah, I rode safe and I, you know, because of this. But like, I will say what I tried to do. I did have some injuries, but what I tried to do, I always tried to race like I practice, right? Like, of course you get a little bit more out of racing because you have the pressure, the intensity, you know, the excitement, all that stuff. So I think you perform better on a race day, but with practice, I always try to push myself to that level where, you know, it's like, I think as a rider, you know, like, okay, I'm out of my comfort zone. Like, dude, the bars are, you know, the bike's dancing. Like, I always try to anticipate what the bike was going to do at that high speed. Like, okay, but if it got to a point where I was going to hit something, I didn't know what it was going to do. All right, now I'm out of my comfort zone, or the setup's really bad, right? But for the most part, it was out of my comfort zone. Yeah. And so I always tried to race to that edge, right? It bit you sometimes because you'd get above it, you know, beyond it. And it's racing dirt bikes, right? The track's never 2 times the same. That bump's changing every single lap. The corners are changing. So I try to anticipate more and just kind of race like I practice. And so I think there's a level of, you know, the risk, you lower the risk a little bit more for sure, you know, because you're not riding out of your comfort zone. Yeah. Now, the risk is still there, right? You can still hit a kicker and that bike's going to react or do something crazy. But for the most part, you could see it coming. So if you ride within that, I try to just ride within that limit. And sometimes it, hindered my performance maybe a little bit, for sure. Didn't win as many races as I could have probably, but at the same time, I was always championship focused, like long term. And again, that probably hindered me from winning championships too, but it also helped. So it's just such a balance.
Totally.
But that's any rider who's, when you're out of your comfort zone, your risk goes up tremendously. So focus on practicing, elevating that speed to where you raise that level.
Totally. All right. 2 questions that are I'm most excited about. What was your favorite technique drill to practice during the week? Technique drill while you're riding? And then how often did you study yourself riding during practice and race? And how often did you study other riders?
So the first part, my favorite technique drill, well, there's 2 of them. The one I would say that I did off the track was, the circle drill. It's just a small circle, as big or small as you want it, really. And I didn't do it as much as I should have. I'm guilty of that for sure. But, and I learned this through Shannon Nide, who's actually, helped me out as an amateur and my brothers. But you go around the circle and you make sure your balls of the foot is on the outside foot peg, right? You got that thing planted and that knee's pushed into the bike. You got your, a nice position grip on the throttle and your elbows up too. And then you got your leg kind of out in front. And the goal is not to tuck the front and dab it because it's just a flat surface. But it's kind of funny, as fit as a rider can get, you do 15, 20 rings of those. I mean, your shoulders burning, your groin's starting to fatigue and your leg wants to drop if you do it long enough. And so then you flip and go the other way. Yeah. And so that was always something I always like, but also just on the track, I always really try to focus on balls of the feet, but gripping the bike low. Yeah. That's something I feel like I could just apply, like, hey, on the pit board, write it on the pit board, right? Like remind me, because I learned the hard way early on when that foot's hanging out there and how it can catch a rut. Yeah, it's not good. So
yeah,
keep them toes tucked in and on the balls of the feet and grip the bike.
Totally. I love it. Were you were doing circles on flat ground without a rut, or were you making like a rut that you're riding in?
Well, no. So you just go out on a flat, maybe it's just a flat, the dirt's completely flat.
Yeah.
I wouldn't do it in the sand, right? Because, but something maybe harder, but then, you do it long enough, you develop a rut.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And then the other cool part on that is like when the rut would develop, you could use your front brake to kind of you could just touch your front brake to keep your front wheel in the rut. So kind of stick in there instead of pushing it.
Totally.
So just those little things,
Totally. I love it. And then did you study tape of yourself, like film?
Yeah, not early on. Obviously, as things progressed and the TV package, the TV and the quality got better, but especially the races, I would watch those for sure and study the other guys and what they did. We had practice footage after every single practice that the team members would film, so we could come in and watch ourselves and other guys' fast laps. And then even at Eldon's later on, when I went to train with Eldon, we'd come inside the shop and we'd study the film from
that day.
The 20 lap moto we did, or the 20-minute moto we did, sections and stuff like that. So yeah, that was just it's just too easy not to have and watch and learn from, really. Next
question: how did you get into coffee business? What was the mindset behind it? Have you always been into coffee, or was it? Explain that transition and that idea, basically.
Absolutely, yeah. So while I was racing, like I said, we were traveling a lot. Some friends introduced me to coffee, and I had never had coffee before. And so trying it, I was like, man, I kind of like this. And over time, I think everybody thought, wow, we all like coffee, but I kind of really enjoyed not just the coffee, but, it was really intriguing, all the other aspects of, when you dived in deeper, and the roasting and the sourcing, and why is this cup taste better than this other cup? So I always enjoyed my coffee in the morning, and it just kind of really was a morning routine. And so there was a couple things that, when I was racing, one of the things that was always interesting to me is I wanted to start my own business. Like that was one thing that when racing was done, that I wanted to kind of venture off and do. And so the other question kind of became, well, what do you want to do? And so when I kind of dived in deeper and looking at my passions and things that I really enjoy, learning about, coffee was one of those. And so I through my racing career, although I didn't start it till the process till after racing, during, we were traveling all over, going to different countries, different states and different countries. And so kind of having that opportunity and being able to try different coffees, different origins. And that was kind of me and my wife's, thing when we would travel, because she would come with me. We would go to local coffee shops and, one-off places, kind of hole in the wall type stuff. And it was awesome. And so from there, kind of naturally, I also had a couple friends who were into coffee as well, who owned coffee shops and had, roasters. And so with that, I was like, I picked their brain and, go see how it's done, learn a little bit. And so it just kind of was a process over time. And I guess it's a long-winded answer, but, when I looked at it deeper, like racing, I was passionate about it. I was going to see it through the challenges. I was going to push through it. And I feel like, that's a good place to start, with, following things that you're passionate about and interested in. And that's kind of always led me to a good place. So it's exciting now to finally start. I started it last year and we launched June 1st. Yeah, I was roasting everything, doing it all out, built out the garage, the whole 9 yards, got the roasters, and we've expanded since then. But we started with one roast, which was received really well. And since then, we've added 3 or 4 more to the lineup. So it's been the last 9 months have been kind of crazy, really? But it's been fun. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
That's cool. So you were doing it yourself out of your garage?
Yeah, I did. I got the roasters. They were little air roasters at the time. I could do 2.5 pounds each. So I could do, which wasn't a lot at the time. So there was nights I was out there for hours trying to, keep up with the demand, but it was fun. And obviously I knew that was going to be short-lived, or I hoped it would. Yeah. I've since expanded and now I have a roasting partner and a much better style of roasting. It's on a Loring machine, which is just the top of the line, and but without sacrificing quality. So at first I was doing it all myself, which heck, at some point, I maxed out and I was going to have to get partners and other people involved, which we have now. We have things in place. So, but I can foresee, aspect of the business as well. And it's been a challenge, but it's the challenge that I was looking for within starting a business as well. So the learning curve has been pretty steep too.
That's cool. That's cool. And how has it been received as far as like, I mean, it sounds like it's going well. How has it been received to your friends, your peers, the industry, and as far as like sales are going? You guys, obviously you're growing, so that's a good sign.
Yeah, things are going great, thankfully. It was received really well. I mean, I got to say in the very beginning, it was like I had my little sample roaster and I was giving it to my friends, and that kind of accelerated things, I would say. I had some people helping me, but once I saw their faces light up and I made sure they weren't just blowing smoke, right? Yeah. They were like, wow, this is really good. And so I was like, all right, well, maybe we're onto something here. And so, yeah, then getting it out there and get it to the family and the friends and, even in the industry, everybody's been really supportive, which has been awesome, and it is direct and consumer online. So it's kind of nice. We can put all the effort and even the dollars, we didn't have to spend a lot of money on overhead with building out a cafe or a coffee shop or something like that. So we're really efficient, but our mantra is fuel your pursuit. I know, kind of like racing was for me, coffee kind of fueled my pursuit, and now it fuels my pursuit as a dad, business owner, and just life in general, athlete. And, that's kind of what we want to do for others too, is, like you're feeling your, we want to feel your pursuits in life, and that's as well as everyone else. So that's kind of our mantra. Yeah.
That's cool. That's cool. I like it. How do you come up with different flavors of coffee? And do you have a group of people you test with?
Yep. So it's kind of a matter of what you want to pick from. When I started in the beginning, I ordered from, it's called Cafe Imports, actually, where we get our specialty coffee from. It's, gosh, I really didn't know what to pick from. So I ordered like 5 samples. One was a Peru, one was a Honduras, Brazil. So trying all those, experimenting, different roasts, and even in the roasting profile, like there's the profile, but like there's the end temperature too, right? So, and it makes a huge difference, because if you go to 194 degrees Celsius to between 194 to 197, or it's you get a different taste, right? Because you're burning the bean longer. It's almost like you're going darker, right?
Gotcha.
So you got to find that M temperature, but ultimately when you kind of dial that in, then that's when I would, hey, give it to my family, give it to my friends. Hey, give me some feedback. What do you think of this? Because, hey, I like this, but I'm just one person. Right. And then there's cupping as well. You can also do some cupping of different origins too, to kind of make sure you're kind of in the ballpark of what you're like, and taste the notes too.
Yeah.
But then even like, if you're going for more of a, like we just launched our whole shot espresso, kind of it's a mixture of a Colombia and a Guatemala. So you got 2 beans you're blending together, but you can't just do 50-50. Sometimes maybe you could, but you also got to find that like right ratio that you bring out the, some coffees are so acidic that it needs to be compensated with something a little bit more, the notes were a little more subtle. So like a Brazil or a Colombia. So it's just trying to find that mixture as well. So trust me, this stuff made my head hurt in the beginning. It's like, wow, because you're trying to find the origins.
Yeah.
Then you got to get the right mixture of, the blend. Then you got to figure out the roast profile, and it's like fine tuning. You're always trying to get a little bit better here and there. So that's kind of where the fun comes in as well. So yeah.
Totally. All right, and then last question: what are your goals for the business, and what do you kind of see you doing with it in the future? Are you going to try to, sponsor riders and really blow it up, or are you happy with the progress you're making and you want to keep the same progress, or where are you at with that?
Yeah, for sure. I definitely want to become established as one of the premier, coffee companies in the industry, for sure, especially within our area that we're going to play in. But, the goal is to grow it online. And then it's not out of the picture to think about maybe some, shops in the future. That's more long-term.
Yeah.
But, and I actually playing around and ideas, kind of the vision of where, like, that's kind of one thing I do want to do in the future is, once this thing really gets established and, we have some good marketing budgets and stuff like that as this thing grows, like I would love to get back into our sport, and whether it's sponsoring a rider or a team, it's all dependent on the circumstances of whatnot, or in motorsports in general. But absolutely, I mean, long term, to be able to kind of give back in a sense of sponsoring a team or an athlete, like that would be a pretty cool dream. Yeah, absolutely.